First contact fallout. The Voxeri High Command vessel Eternal Dominance trembled slightly as its sensors detected an anomaly at the edge of the Helios sector. Supreme Commander Vexnar's crystalline exoskeleton glinted under the blue lights of the command deck as his subordinates scrambled to identify the disturbance. "Report," Vexnar demanded, his four upper limbs folded in what his species considered a posture of authority. "A vessel has entered the restricted zone." "Supreme Commander," answered First Tactician Zorvac. "Configuration matches known human designs." A ripple of what humans might interpret as laughter spread through the command deck. The Voxeri had established their blockade around the human mining colony of Helios 9-3 standard cycles ago. No human ship had dared to challenge their technological superiority since the disastrous first encounter that had left 3 human destroyers as nothing more than scattered debris. "Visual confirmation," Vexnar ordered. The main display shimmered and revealed a sleek, matte black vessel. It was small by Voxeri standards, perhaps a fifth the size of the Eternal Dominance. Its design was unusual, asymmetrical and angular, more reminiscent of the primitive stealth aircraft humans had once used in their atmospheric conflicts than the standard human naval designs. "Designation?" Vexnar asked, suddenly more interested. "UEA's Shadow Dancer, a non-standard configuration not in our databases." Vexnar's compound eyes narrowed. Non-standard meant unpredictable, and unpredictable meant potentially dangerous, regardless of technological inferiority. Open communications. Commander Elise Rice sat perfectly still in the captain's chair of the UEA's Shadow Dancer, her dark eyes fixed on the tactical display. The experimental vessel hummed around her, a symphony of human innovation designed for one purpose: to challenge the seemingly insurmountable technological advantage of the Voxeri. "They're scanning us, Commander," reported Lieutenant Hikaru Nakamura from the sensor station. "Standard Voxeri protocol. Full spectrum sweep." Reyes allowed herself a small smile. "And the countermeasures are working. They're seeing exactly what we want them to see." The bridge crew exchanged glances. 6 months of development, testing, and training had led to this moment. The Shadow Dancer wasn't just a ship, it was a statement, humanity's answer to the Voxeri's arrogance. "Incoming transmission," Communications Officer Chen announced. "On screen," Rise ordered, straightening her uniform. First impressions mattered, especially when you were about to do something monumentally stupid or brave, often the same thing in human military history. The image of Supreme Commander Vexnar filled the main screen, his crystalline form imposing even through the digital interface. "Human vessel." The alien's translated voice sounded artificial and cold. "You have entered restricted space claimed by the Voxeri hegemony. Your presence violates the terms of conditional surrender established after your failed resistance. Withdraw immediately or be destroyed." Reyes met the alien commander's compound gaze without flinching. "This is Commander Elise Rice of the United Earth ship Shadow Dancer. We recognize no such surrender, conditional or otherwise. You are illegally blockading a sovereign human colony and have imprisoned civilians against all interstellar conventions. I am here to negotiate their release." The Voxeri commander's upper limbs twitched in what intelligence reports suggested was amusement or contempt. "Negotiate? With a single vessel? Your species' capacity for self-delusion continues to fascinate, Commander Reyes." "Perhaps," Reyes replied calmly, "but we humans have another fascinating capacity: innovation in the face of adversity. I'm offering one chance for peaceful resolution before I demonstrate that capacity." Vexinar's crystalline form seemed to shimmer with what might have been laughter. "Very well, Commander. You have 1 standard hour to present your terms. After that, we will add your vessel to the debris field that serves as a monument to human hubris in this sector." The communication ended. "Well," Rise said to her bridge crew, "that went about as expected. They've deployed a standard containment formation, Commander," Tactical Officer Dias reported. 4 Corvette-class vessels moving to box us in." Reyes nodded. "Perfect. They're following protocol. She activated the ship-wide communication system. All hands, this is Commander Reyes. The Voxeri have responded exactly as anticipated. We've studied their tactics, their technology, and their psychology for 6 months. Now it's time to put that knowledge to use. Turning to her executive officer, Commander Sanjay Patel, she said, "Begin Phase 1. Patel nodded grimly. Deploying Vohikatra. Rays. From the Shadow Dancer's ventral hull, 6 small, autonomous devices detached and drifted outward, seemingly inert. Arrays deployed and active, Patel confirmed after a moment. Quantum entanglement network established. Good, Ray said. Now we wait for them to make their move. The hour passed in tense silence. On the bridge of the Shadow Dancer, the crew monitored their systems and the Voxeri vessels with intense focus. The aliens had maintained their containment formation, confident in their technological superiority. When the deadline expired, the Voxeri commander reappeared on the main screen. Your time has elapsed, Commander Reyes. What are your terms? Reyes leaned forward slightly. The immediate release of all human civilians from Helios 9, free passage for them to return to Earth space, and your withdrawal from this sector. Vexinar's crystalline structure flashed briefly, the Voxeri equivalent of derisive laughter. Your species' audacity is its sole admirable quality. Your terms are rejected. Prepare for. I wasn't finished, Reyes interrupted. I also want to know why you're so desperate to control this system. What did your mining operations find on Helios 9 that was worth violating multiple treaties and risking interstellar war? For the first time, the Voxeri commander hesitated. It was brief, but Reyes had been trained to notice such things. Something about her question had struck a nerve. Your primitive understanding of stellar resources is irrelevant. Vexnar finally responded. This exchange is over. Your destruction will serve as a reminder to your government about the consequences of defiance. The communication ended abruptly. They're powering up weapons, Diaz reported, his voice steady despite the tension. Reyes nodded. Right on schedule. All hands, battle stations, initiate phantom protocols. Throughout the ship, systems that had remained dormant suddenly activated. The Shadow Dancer had been designed not to match Voxeri firepower. That would have been impossible, but to exploit a fundamental weakness that Earth's scientists had theorized after studying debris from previous engagements. Phantom active, the ship's AI confirmed. Quantum field stabilized. Voxeri vessels are locking weapons, Diaz reported. Let them fire first, Reyes ordered. Everything depends on their initial attack pattern. The bridge fell silent as they watched the tactical display. The 4 Voxeri corvettes had taken position at optimal firing angles, while the Eternal Dominance remained at a safe distance, confident in its smaller vessel's ability to handle a single human ship. Energy spike. Nakamura called out. They're firing. Brilliant beams of concentrated energy erupted from the Voxeri vessels, converging on the Shadow Dancer's position. For a moment, it seemed as though the human ship would be vaporized instantly. Instead, something unexpected happened. The energy beams appeared to bend around the Shadow Dancer, distorting as if passing through water before continuing into empty space. On the Voxeri vessels, confusion reigned. Direct hit confirmed. The Voxeri weapons officer reported to Commander Vexnar, then hesitated as the sensor readings updated. Wait, no impact registered. The human vessel. It's still there. Impossible, Vexnar hissed. Scan again. On the Shadow Dancer, Reyes allowed herself a moment of satisfaction. Status. Phantom field holding at 82%, the AI reported. Energy redirection successful. Whisper arrays are collecting and storing the diverted energy, Patil added, currently at 37% capacity. Reyes nodded. Good. Now for Phase 2. Navigator, execute pattern Delta. The Shadow Dancer suddenly accelerated, moving in a complex pattern that seemed to defy the laws of physics. The ship's experimental drive system allowed for maneuvers that would have torn apart conventional vessels, using localized space-time manipulation to reduce inertial effects on the hull and crew. "They're firing again," Diaz reported. Once more, the Voxeri energy weapons seemed to slip around the human vessel without impact. Each attack fed more energy into the HFY arrays, which stored and converted it through a process Earth scientists had reverse-engineered from Voxeri technology. "The corvettes are adjusting their formation," Nakamura noted. "They're attempting to create a crossfire pattern that would saturate the area." "As expected," Rice said calmly. "Time to show them what we've learned. Tactical, prepare ECHO sequence." As the Voxeri corvettes repositioned, the Shadow Dancer suddenly released a cloud of what appeared to be metallic dust. The particles dispersed rapidly, forming an expanding sphere around the human vessel. The Voxeri fired again, and this time, their energy beams struck the dust cloud. Instead of continuing through, however, the beams refracted in multiple directions, some bouncing back toward the Voxeri vessels themselves. On the Eternal Dominance, Vexnar watched in disbelief as one of his corvettes took a direct hit from its own redirected weapon beam. The vessel's shields flared and failed, leaving it vulnerable. "What is this?" he demanded. "How are they doing this?" No one on his command deck had an answer. The humans had somehow developed technology that could not only evade Voxeri weapons but turn them against their originators. It shouldn't have been possible. Their intelligence indicated that human technology was at least 2 generations behind Voxeri advancements. Commander Rice opened a channel to the Voxeri flagship. "Supreme Commander Vexnar, perhaps now you'd like to reconsider my terms. This demonstration can end here, or it can escalate. The choice is yours." Vexnar's crystalline structure darkened with rage. "This changes nothing, human. You have one ship with clever defenses. We have an entire fleet." "Do you?" Rice asked, her tone almost conversational. "Check your long-range sensors." Vexnar gestured to his sensor officer, who immediately began scanning the surrounding space. The alien's posture shifted noticeably as the results came in. "Multiple incoming vessels detected at the edge of the system," the officer reported. "Configuration: human." Rice smiled. "The Shadow Dancer was never meant to fight your fleet alone, Commander. It was meant to prove a point, that your technological advantage isn't as absolute as you believed. Now shall we discuss those terms again?" As the first part of the confrontation concluded, the ultimate outcome remained uncertain. The humans had demonstrated unexpected capabilities, but the Voxeri still held numerical superiority and control of the colony. The true test of humanity's ingenuity was yet to come. The impossible gambit. Supreme Commander Vexnar's compound eyes studied the tactical display with growing concern. The human reinforcements, 3 destroyers, and what appeared to be a cruiser-class vessel, had taken position at the edge of the system, just beyond immediate engagement range. Combined with the inexplicable capabilities of the smaller Shadow Dancer, the situation had evolved from a simple enforcement action to something far more complex. "Status of Corvette 3, he demanded. "Shields restored to 40% capacity, weapons systems compromised," his second reported. "The reflected energy damaged primary power conduits." Vexnar's crystalline exoskeleton clicked softly as he considered his options. The Voxeri hegemony had built its reputation on technological superiority. For millennia, they had encountered species with greater numbers or resource bases, but none had matched their advanced energy manipulation technologies. Until now. Recall the corvettes to defensive positions around the colony. Alert the ground forces to prepare for possible infiltration attempts. He reopened the communication channel to the human vessel. "Commander Rice, your demonstration is noted. However, you should be aware that we have over 3,000 of your colonists under our direct control. Any aggressive action by your vessels will result in regrettable consequences for them." On the bridge of the Shadow Dancer, Rice received the Voxeri commander's threat with outward calm, though her jaw tightened perceptibly. He's bluffing, Paddle suggested quietly. The Voxari don't engage in mass civilian casualties. It violates their honor codes. Perhaps, Rise replied, but we can't take that chance. She turned to Communications Officer Chen. Open a channel to Admiral Winslow on the Resolute. The weathered face of Admiral Helena Winslow appeared on a secondary screen. Quite a show you've put on, Commander. The Phantom and HFY systems performed beyond expectations. Thank you, Admiral, but we have a complication. Vexnar is threatening the colonists. Winslow nodded grimly. Expected, but unfortunate. Are you prepared for Phase 3? Yes, Mom. The Spectre team is standing by. Proceed, then. The fleet will maintain position and provide the necessary distraction when signaled. Rise acknowledged the order and turned to her tactical officer. Prepare a Spectre team for deployment and bring the Whisper arrays to full capacity. We'll need every joule of stored energy. As preparations continued on the Shadow Dancer, Rise reopened the channel to the Voxari commander. Supreme Commander Vexnar, threatening civilians violates at least 3 interstellar conventions that the Voxari hegemony has signed. Is this how you honor your commitments? The crystalline alien's posture stiffened. If there was one thing intelligence had discovered about the Voxari, it was their obsession with maintaining the appearance of honor, even while engaging in what humans would consider dishonorable tactics. We are merely stating facts, Commander. The safety of your colonists depends entirely on your actions. Then perhaps we should discuss a more limited agreement, Rise suggested. A temporary ceasefire while representatives meet to negotiate directly. No fleet movements, no further military actions. Vexinar's compound eyes narrowed slightly. What form would these negotiations take? A neutral meeting ground. 2 representatives from each side, unarmed. The mining facility's administrative center on Helios 9 would suffice. After a moment's consideration, Vexnar responded, acceptable, with one condition. Your vessel must power down its defensive systems for the duration of the talks. Rise pretended to consider this. Agreed, provided your corvettes do the same. Very well. You may send your representatives in 6 hours. They will be granted safe passage. When the communication ended, Paddle looked at Reyes skeptically. He agreed too easily. Of course he did, Rise replied with a grim smile. Because he thinks he's just gained an advantage. Lieutenant Davidson, is the SPCTR team ready? A tall, dark-skinned woman in specialized combat gear stepped onto the bridge. Ready and waiting, Commander. My team can deploy as soon as you give the word. Good. You'll be our negotiators, but your real mission starts the moment you're on the surface. Davidson nodded. We've studied the colony's layout extensively. If the intelligence about what the Voxari discovered there is correct, we should be able to locate and secure it within 3 hours. Remember, Rise emphasized, this isn't just about rescuing the colonists. If we're right about what the Voxari found on Helios 9, it could shift the balance of power across the entire sector. 6 hours later, a small shuttle departed from the Shadow Dancer, ostensibly carrying the human negotiators. Lieutenant Commander Aisha Davidson and her 3-person SPCTR team were dressed in formal diplomatic attire that cleverly concealed various specialized equipment. Their shuttle followed the designated approach vector to Helios 9's main landing facility. As agreed, the Shadow Dancer powered down its defensive systems, at least those that the Voxari could detect. The corvettes likewise reduced their energy signatures, creating a temporary detente. What the Voxari didn't realize was that the HFY arrays, now fully charged with the energy they had absorbed from the alien weapons, remained operational. Their quantum entanglement network allowed them to function without conventional power signatures. As Davidson's shuttle entered Helios 9's atmosphere, Rise contacted Admiral Winslow. Phase 3 initiated. Be prepared to execute Sunburst Protocol on my signal. Understood, Commander. The fleet is ready. On the colony's surface, the SPCTR team was met by a contingent of Voxari guards. Davidson played her role perfectly, presenting formal credentials and requesting to be escorted to the administrative center for the negotiations. The Voxeri escort, consisting of 4 crystalline warriors in what appeared to be ceremonial armor, led them through the colony's main thoroughfare. Davidson took careful note of the colonists they passed, humans going about seemingly normal activities, but with a noticeable tension in their movements and expressions. At strategic locations, Voxeri guards maintained watchful positions. "Your people appear to be well treated," one of the Voxeri escorts commented, the translation device giving his words a mechanistic quality. "Appearances can be deceiving," Davidson replied neutrally. At the administrative center, they were led to a conference room where 2 Voxeri officials waited. Davidson recognized one as Zorvac, the first tactician from Vexenar's command vessel. "Welcome to Helios 9, Zorvac greeted them. "We are prepared to discuss terms for a peaceful resolution to this unfortunate situation." Davidson smiled diplomatically. "As are we. But first, I would like to establish communication with my vessel." "Of course," Zorvac agreed, gesturing to a communication terminal. "This has been configured for your use." Davidson approached the terminal, subtly activating a device concealed in her sleeve. The device interfaced with the colony's communication network, bypassing the Voxeri monitoring systems and establishing a secure channel to the Shadow Dancer. "Commander Reyes, we have arrived safely and are preparing to begin negotiations." "Acknowledged, Lieutenant Commander. Proceed as planned." As Davidson turned back to the Voxeri representatives, she gave a subtle hand signal to her team. Each member casually took position near different exits or control panels in the room. "Before we begin formal discussions," Davidson said, "I must ask, why Helios 9? Of all the potential mining colonies in this sector, why was this one important enough to risk conflict with Earth?" Zorvac's crystalline structure shifted slightly, a sign of discomfort, according to their intelligence briefings. "The resources of this system are vast and strategically valuable. Yet your mining operations have focused exclusively on the northern continent, in a region with no significant deposits of any materials listed in your official mining registry." The Voxeri officials exchanged glances. "Your information is incomplete," Zorvac stated flatly. "Is it?" Davidson produced a small data device. This contains survey reports from the colony's original exploration team. They discovered something unusual in the northern continent, something they couldn't identify with standard analysis tools, something that, coincidentally, your forces secured within hours of your arrival. The atmosphere in the room changed perceptibly. The Voxeri guards moved closer to the exits. "Your speculation is irrelevant to these negotiations," Zorvac said, his translated voice taking on a harder edge. Davidson smiled. "It's not speculation. We know you found a remnant of precursor technology, specifically what our scientists believe to be a partial schematic for a dimensional phase inverter." The reaction was immediate and telling. The Voxeri officials froze momentarily, their crystalline structures flashing with what intelligence had identified as alarm. "The negotiations are concluded," Zorvac announced abruptly. "You will return to your vessel immediately." "I don't think so," Davidson replied calmly, nodding to her team. In perfect synchronization, the Spectre operatives activated devices concealed in their diplomatic attire. A cascading field of energy swept through the room, temporarily disrupting the Voxeri neural networks. The crystalline aliens seized up, their movements becoming erratic and uncoordinated. Davidson tapped her communication device. "Commander, Phase 3 is active." The intelligence was correct. They found precursor technology. Proceeding to secure package and initiate colonist evacuation. On the Shadow Dancer, Rise immediately contacted Admiral Winslow. "Sunburst protocol authorized. Commence fleet movement." From their position at the edge of the system, the human reinforcement vessels suddenly accelerated, not toward Helios 9, but in seemingly random directions. This was not random movement, however, but a carefully choreographed maneuver designed to draw the Voxeri fleet's attention and resources away from the colony. Simultaneously, the Shadow Dancer reactivated its full defensive capabilities and deployed a new configuration of the HFY Sci-Fi arrays. Using the stored energy from the previous Voxeri attacks, the arrays generated a massive electromagnetic pulse specifically calibrated to the frequencies used by Voxeri communication systems. On the Eternal Dominance, alarms blared as communications suddenly failed. Vexnar found himself unable to contact his ground forces or coordinate his fleet's response to the human vessel's unexpected movements. "Restore communications," he ordered, his crystalline form pulsing with rage. "Launch all remaining corvettes to protect the research facility." But it was already too late. On Helios 9, Davidson's team had secured the administrative center and accessed the colony's internal systems. Emergency protocols were activated, directing colonists to predetermined evacuation points. "Commander," Davidson reported, "we've located the precursor artifact. It's being held in a research facility 2 kilometers north of our position. Security is heavy, but with the communications disruption, they're operating on standard protocols." "Understood," Rise replied. "I'm deploying additional support. Hold your position and continue the evacuation." From the Shadow Dancer's launch bay, a squadron of combat drones emerged, each programmed with advanced evasion algorithms. They streaked toward the colony's surface, targeting key Voxeri defensive positions. The battle for Helios 9 had entered its most critical phase, with the fate of the colonists and control of the mysterious precursor technology hanging in the balance. As the human forces executed their meticulously planned operation, the Voxeri found themselves facing an opponent whose ingenuity compensated for their technological disadvantages in ways they had never anticipated. Victory beyond technology. Supreme Commander Vexnar stood rigidly in the command center of the Eternal Dominance, watching as his carefully constructed advantages crumbled around him. Communications remained sporadic, with only limited contact between vessels possible through backup systems. His corvettes moved in disorganized patterns, responding to threats without central coordination. "Status of the research facility," he demanded. "Unknown, Supreme Commander," his second replied. "Our last communication indicated human forces approaching, but we've received nothing since." Vexnar's crystalline structure darkened with rage and frustration. The human tactics defied conventional military logic. Instead of concentrating their forces for maximum impact, they had dispersed them in patterns that seemed random but somehow managed to create maximum disruption. "Launch my personal shuttle," he ordered suddenly. "I will assess the situation on the surface myself." His officers exchanged concerned glances. "Supreme Commander, protocol dictates." "Protocol has failed us," Vexnar interrupted harshly. "These humans do not follow predictable patterns. We must adapt." He turned to his second. "Continue attempting to restore fleet communications. If I do not return or make contact within 2 standard cycles, withdraw to the nearest hegemony outpost and request reinforcements." On the surface of Helios 9, Lieutenant Commander Davidson and her team had reached the outskirts of the research facility. The building was a stark, angular structure that contrasted sharply with the more utilitarian design of the human colony. Voxeri guards maintained defensive positions around its perimeter, their crystalline forms glinting in the light of the system's primary star. Analysis. Davidson asked her team's technical specialist, Corporal Zhang. Zhang studied the readings on his specialized scanner. Heavy energy shielding around the central chamber. That's where they're keeping the artifact. Security systems are still operational despite the communications blackout. They must have isolated power sources. Recommendations. "We can't breach the shields with our current equipment," Zhang replied. "But there might be another way." He pointed to a secondary structure connected to the main facility. "That appears to be their power regulation center. If we could create a surge in the right frequency range, it might temporarily destabilize the shields without damaging what's inside." Davidson nodded. "Good. Riley, Rodriguez, you're with me." Zhang, maintain position here and continue monitoring. If the situation changes, alert the commander immediately. As Davidson's team moved toward the power regulation center, the combat drones from the Shadow Dancer engaged the Voxeri defensive positions. They didn't attack directly, but instead executed complex evasive patterns that forced the Voxeri to expend energy and attention tracking them. Meanwhile, throughout the colony, the evacuation continued. Human colonists moved toward designated gathering points where shuttles from the Resolute had begun landing to transport them to safety. The Voxeri guards, cut off from Central Command and faced with conflicting priorities, struggled to maintain control of the situation. On the Shadow Dancer, Commander Reyes monitored the developing situation with intense focus. The operation was proceeding according to plan, but experience had taught her that no plan survived contact with the enemy without adaptation. "Commander," Paddle reported, "we're detecting a small vessel launching from the Eternal Dominance. Configuration suggests a command shuttle." Reyes raised an eyebrow. "Interesting. Vexnar is coming to take personal control of the situation. That wasn't in our projected scenarios. Should we intercept?" Reyes considered this for a moment. "No. His presence on the surface might actually work to our advantage. Tactical, redirect 2 of the Whisper arrays to focus on the colony's northern sector. I want precise control of our energy redirection capabilities if we need them." As she issued these orders, a communication came through from Admiral Winslow on the Resolute. "Commander, evacuation is proceeding at 40% completion. Estimated time to full extraction is 47 minutes. The Voxeri fleet is beginning to regroup. Their backup communications are coming online faster than anticipated." "Understood, Admiral. We may need to accelerate our timetable. Davidson's team is moving to secure the artifact now." Winslow's expression was grave. If the intelligence about this precursor technology is accurate, securing it could change the entire strategic balance with the hegemony. "But remember your primary mission, Commander. The colonists come first," Reyes acknowledged. "Always." At the research facility, Davidson's team had reached the power regulation center. It was minimally guarded, with most of the Voxeri forces concentrated around the main building. Using specialized equipment, they bypassed the exterior security and gained entry. Inside, they found banks of crystalline structures that pulsed with energy, the Voxeri equivalent of computer systems and power regulators. Corporal Rodriguez, the team's demolitions expert, examined them carefully. "These are connected in series," she observed. "If we can identify the frequency modulators, we might be able to create the surge we need without setting off alarms." As they worked, Zhang's voice came through their communication devices. "Davidson, be advised. A Voxeri command shuttle has landed near the main facility. Facial recognition confirms Supreme Commander Vexnar is on site, along with an elite guard unit." Davidson frowned. "That complicates things. How long until you can identify the right modulators?" Rodriguez. 5 minutes, maybe less. Make it 2. We need to move before Vexnar can reorganize his forces." Rodriguez nodded and accelerated her work, her fingers moving with practiced precision over the alien technology. After 90 seconds of tense silence, she looked up. "Got it. Setting the surge parameters now." She attached a small device to one of the crystalline structures. "This will create a cascading overload in the shield generators. The effect will last approximately 30 seconds before emergency systems compensate." "That's our window," Davidson declared. "Set it for remote detonation and let's move." The team exited the power center and regrouped with Zhang. From their position, they could see Vexnar and his guards entering the main research facility, the Supreme Commander's crystalline form distinctive even at a distance. "Commander Reyes," Davidson reported, "we're ready to breach the facility, but Vexnar is on site, requesting tactical support." "Acknowledged," Reyes responded. "Whisper arrays repositioned. On your signal, we'll create a localized energy disturbance to distract the external guards." Davidson gave final instructions to her team, then activated her command channel. "All elements in position. Execute. 3 events happened simultaneously. Rodriguez triggered the power surge. The Whisper arrays redirected concentrated energy to create a blinding display near the facility's main entrance, and Davidson's team moved swiftly toward a secondary access point identified in their intelligence briefings. Inside the facility, alarms blared as the shields protecting the central chamber fluctuated and failed. Vexnar, who had been examining the precursor artifact, looked up in alarm. "Secure the artifact," he ordered his guards. "Prepare for emergency transport to the shuttle." But before his orders could be carried out, Davidson's team breached the chamber from an unexpected direction. The ensuing confrontation was brief but intense. The Spectre team's specialized weapons, designed specifically to disrupt Voxery neural networks without causing permanent damage, incapacitated the guards efficiently. Vexnar, however, proved more resilient. His personal shield absorbed the first volley, and he responded with a weapon that fired concentrated energy bursts. "Fall back," Davidson ordered as one of the bursts nearly struck Rodriguez. "Defensive pattern Alpha." The team took cover behind various pieces of equipment in the chamber, exchanging fire with the Voxery commander. The standoff lasted only moments before Jung identified a weakness. His shield generator, left side, near what would be a shoulder on a human. It's fluctuating after each discharge of his weapon. Davidson nodded. "Cover me." As her team laid down suppressive fire, she circled to a flanking position and waited for Vexnar to fire again. The moment his weapon discharged, she targeted the indicated point with pinpoint accuracy. The shield flickered and collapsed, and her second shot struck the Voxery commander's weapon, destroying it. Vexnar stood motionless, his crystalline form glinting under the chamber's lights. Without his weapon or shields, he was effectively neutralized. "Supreme Commander Vexnar," Davidson announced formally, "you are now in custody of United Earth Forces. Your personnel on this colony are surrounded, your fleet is compromised, and your advantage is lost." The Voxery commander's compound eyes studied her for a long moment. "You planned this from the beginning," he stated, his translated voice carrying a note of what might have been grudging respect. "The negotiations, the fleet movements, the communications disruption, all to secure this." His gaze shifted to the artifact that had been the focus of his research teams. It was surprisingly small, a metallic cube approximately 20 centimeters on each side, covered in intricate etchings that seemed to shift and change when viewed from different angles. "Do you even understand what you found?" he asked. "We know it's precursor technology," Davidson replied. "We know it contains partial schematics for a dimensional phase inverter. And we know the Voxery hegemony violated multiple treaties to seize it secretly." "It is more than that," Vexnar said. "The precursor's technology operates on principles beyond even Vox.